Welcome to the media briefing on the vaccine pass. With us today, Deputy Secretary for Food and Health, Mr. Kevin Choi, Deputy Secretary for Education Mr. Edward To, Deputy Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene, Ms. Deanne Wong, Deputy Director of Social Welfare Services, Mr. Kwok Chi Leung, Deputy Government Chief Information Officer, Mr. Tony Wong, and Ms. Ellen Chan, Principal Assistant Secretary for Food and Health. I would first invite Mr. Choi to tell us about the implementation details of the vaccine pass, and then Mr. Tony Wong would perform a demonstration. Good afternoon, members of the public, friends from the media. Hong Kong faces an extremely severe pandemic, and we and the government and society must stand united in overcoming the pandemic. As the Secretary for Food and Health and Controller of the Center for Health Protection said yesterday, with the climbing caseload, we must strictly observe social distancing measures and minimize social activities, and some of the measures might be further tightened. The overall social distancing measures that will come in force this Thursday, that is February the 24th, we will announce the details in a day or two. Today, we would first talk about one of the tightening measures, which is the vaccine pass. This measure will apply to premises that will still be open, and currently these include eating establishments, supermarkets, markets, shopping malls, etc. Under this measure, only vaccinated or exempted persons would be allowed to enter and stay in these premises. Vaccination is an essential element in combating the pandemic. For vaccinated persons, even if they do test positive, their conditions would be relatively mild and their viral load would decline at a faster rate, and this would help alleviate the burden on our healthcare system, which allows those with genuine medical needs to receive proper care and treatment. In terms of the applicability of the vaccine pass as a whole, the Secretary for Food and Health would issue instructions under the Prevention and Control of Disease Vaccine Pass Regulation CAP 599L, and the vaccine pass will apply to all catering premises and specified scheduled premises under the Prevention and Control of Disease Requirements and Directions Business and Premises Regulation CAP 599F. And on this slide, you can see the premises that remain open, which include clubhouses, shopping malls, department stores, supermarkets, markets and bazaars, and hotels and guest houses. After February the 24th, we will announce the premises that may still open depending on the social distancing measures to be announced. Meanwhile, some other places would implement the vaccine pass by or through administrative instructions. These include schools, offices of government and public bodies, public hospitals, residential care homes for the elderly and for the disabled. However, there could be alternative requirements in place for applicable persons for the above premises. For instance, at this stage, these include patients and accompanying persons in public hospitals, primary and secondary school students, service users in government and public body offices. They would enjoy exemptions. If there are questions about the implementation of the vaccine pass in schools or residential care homes, officials from the Education Bureau and Social Welfare Department will be able to answer them today. In terms of the number of vaccine doses required, the vaccine pass will be implemented in 3 phases. Eventually, for members of the public, they would need to ultimately receive 3 doses of vaccines. And for the first phase, that is from From Thursday to April the 29th, the vaccine pass will apply to persons aged 12 and above, and they are required to receive at least one dose of vaccine. And for the requirements in the second and third phases, you may refer to the table on the screen, and details will be announced through the website and press release. For persons that are not fit for vaccination due to health grounds, they may prove their physical conditions through medical proof, and those who hold exemption certificates issued by medical practitioners can still enter the relevant premises. The vaccine pass, or what we used to call the vaccine bubble, was nothing new. We started implementing the relevant arrangements from April last year at Type D eating establishments. From Thursday, anyone who enters or stays in catering premises or scheduled premises, save for exemptions, they must bring their vaccination records or exemption certificates with them to prove that they have satisfied the requirements. Under the vaccine pass, establishments would be divided into two types: active checking premises and passive checking premises. For premises subject to active checking and still allowed to open, these include catering premises and clubhouses. Persons who enter these two types of premises must proactively produce their vaccination records or exemption certificates, and the responsible persons of the premises would scan the QR code with the QR code verification scanner mobile app developed by the government. As for premises subject to passive checking, this is a new arrangement. These premises include the newly added scheduled premises such as shopping malls, department stores, supermarkets, markets, and bazaars. The responsible persons for these premises must display the relevant directions at the entrance to ensure that their staff members but not customers comply with the vaccine pass requirements. For persons such as customers entering these premises, they do not have to proactively produce their vaccination records to the responsible persons, but enforcement officers might conduct spot checks. In other words, for those who enter shopping malls, department stores, supermarkets, markets, and bazaars, they simply have to bring with them their vaccination records in the same way as bringing their Hong Kong identity cards. For hotels and guest houses, those who stay in hotels and guest houses do not need to bring their vaccination records, but for those who enter restaurants or other specified premises in hotels or guest houses must bring or produce the records. Members of the public can bring electronic or paper-based vaccination records. For electronic records, they could be stored in the Leave Homesafe app or through the IM Smart or eHealth mobile apps. Later, Mr. Tony Wong, Deputy Government Chief Information Officer, would demonstrate how we can make use of these electronic vaccination records or scan the Leave Homesafe app in a convenient manner. Members of the public, friends from the media, the vaccine pass and a new round of social distancing measures will be implemented concurrently from Thursday. Given the fifth outbreak, we urge everyone to play a part by minimizing unnecessary social contact, work from home if possible, and for those who must go out, for instance, those who need to buy their daily necessities at shopping malls by producing a vaccine pass, please avoid crowded places and maintain proper personal and environmental hygiene. Everyone should get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect themselves and their families and to alleviate the burden on our healthcare system. By standing united, we will be able to fight and overcome the pandemic. Over to Mr. Wang, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the public and media friends. With the implementation of Vaccine Pass, the Leap Homesafe app, and the QR code verification scanner have been updated. For the Leap Homesafe app, there is an automatic function to display the vaccination record. Besides storing the vaccination record, it can also store exemption certificates. Members of the public, when entering premises requiring active checking, you can show the Leap Homesafe app to the staff. It will facilitate checking of vaccination records or medical exemption certificates by staff. We have also made the installation of the scanner more easy for staffers. They only need to install the scanner and then scan the mobile devices. As shown by my device, for members of the public installed with the Leap Homesafe app, the scanner can automatically scan the vaccination record. When the members of the public scan the QR code of the premises, there will be an alert. So by this alert, the staff member will know that the person is vaccinated and is allowed to enter. For people with exemption certificates, the alert will sound different. For some premises, their arrangements and their requirements for vaccination and medical exemption are different. So you can tell by the sound. If there is no vaccination record, the Leap Homesafe will display a red QR code. And when the member of the public scan the QR code of the premises, the alert will tell you that this QR code is not verified, and staff members will be alerted. The QR code verification scanner is very convenient. For premises without the installation, staff members can use the handheld device to scan the QR code. Let's say if someone has a paper-based vaccination record, then you simply have to scan the documents and verify the vaccination record. During phase 2 and phase 3, if we have to check the number of doses received, the scanner can also tell you how many doses have been administered. Staff members can easily identify the details of the vaccination record. The scanner is a useful tool for staff members to trace those who entered premises requiring active checking. The record would be stored within the QR code scanner. The data would be deleted after 31 days. The data is encrypted. The relevant personal data, including the number of the identification documents and the name, would be redacted and hashed. With the encryption, the identity of the user cannot be identified, unless it is necessary for the CHP to trace the user. Then a request will be made to gain access to the data. A one-off password will be required. Then the CHP can compare the information and data of the person who has entered the premises. This will be useful in contact tracing when there is a case in a premises. Through the updates of the apps, we hope that we can facilitate the implementation of the vaccine pass scheme and also make it easier for users and staff members to use the app. For the more than 110,000 private and public premises who have registered under our scheme, we have issued the technical information pack to them, including short video clips and pamphlets, to explain to them how the QR code verification scanner can be used. And also we have uploaded the videos to the Leave Homesafe thematic site so that members of the public would know how the information is stored. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Now we will open the floor to questions. Media friends, please use our mic to ask your questions and identify your media organization. Please limit your questions to no more than 3. The gentleman in a white jacket. Good afternoon. I'm from Phoenix News. How will the administration enforce the vaccine pass scheme? What is the criteria for inspection and enforcement? During the initial period, if members of the public violate the rules because they are unfamiliar with the scheme, will discretion be given? And how long after the implementation of the scheme can we achieve 90% vaccination?
Mr. Choi, thank you very much for the questions. In terms of the inspection arrangements and possible discretion, for the 2 types of premises we talked about, for active checking premises, most catering premises are type D premises, that is, customers must scan the Leave Homesafe app and produce the vaccine pass or QR code. Currently, we do carry out regular enforcement operations at restaurants to check for compliance by responsible persons and customers, and we will continue this line of work. For the newly added premises, or what we call the passive checking premises, these include shopping malls, etc. Like I said, it is as simple as bringing your Hong Kong identity card, so long as you are vaccinated. By bringing the vaccination record or vaccine pass with you, you would be seen as complying with the requirements. In terms of enforcement, we will continue our work based on the regulations. We hope the public would understand that vaccination is good for themselves, their families, and the society as a whole. This is akin to bringing your Hong Kong identity card when you go out. Bringing your vaccine pass is the natural thing to do. Like we said, many experts call for a 90% vaccination rate. So in terms of implementing the vaccine pass, increasing the number of vaccination venues and providing special vaccination services for the elderly and children. Through all these measures, we hope to boost the vaccination rate, but we do not have a timeline yet. But we hope that this could be achieved as soon as possible. Next question. I'm from cable TV. You talked about the new Leave Homesafe app. How can you ensure that people who enter the premises use their own mobile phone or app? For people who use other people's or who produce other people's vaccination records, are there any penalties? Responsible persons of catering premises are required to scan the QR code verification scanner app. So are there penalties if they do not use the app? Can you give us any examples of exemptions? Let's say if I must pass through a shopping mall on my way home, and if I'm subject to a check, do I tell the enforcement officers that I'm merely passing by? So, well, there were claims that if you can take another route home instead of passing through the shopping mall, then you should take another route. The requirement would be enforced till the end of the year. Will this continue beyond that? And in the next phase, for those under the age of 12, they are required to use or adopt the vaccine pass as well. But what if they do not have mobile phones? I would first answer the first question. For the question about restaurants, I would defer to the FHD. For those who produce other people's records, the arrangements or penalties would be the same as those who use other people's documents. We hope members of the public would not use other people's records. So our goal is to increase the vaccination rate, and after you are vaccinated, you can use your own record instead of using other people's records. As for exemptions, let me give some examples. A dedicated website will be available soon, together with illustrations. Some people are concerned that they have to pass through a shopping mall to reach home or a workplace. That would be a reasonable exemption. However, reasonableness would be assessed. That is, if you are merely passing through a mall without engaging in activities such as buying groceries there, well, we want to reiterate that the vaccine pass is not a complicated arrangement. You will be allowed to pass through these venues or places if you are vaccinated. If certain services are available at those venues, such as clinics or medical facilities, these could be examples of exemptions as well. Another common scenario would be that if you visit a restaurant simply to order takeaway food or to receive or to pick up food, then these would be exemptions as well. As to whether the vaccine pass would be extended to those under the age of 12 and the relevant timetable, like we said, the current threshold is 12. We understand that vaccination in children might become increasingly important, so we would not rule out including those under 12 at a later stage. But till June the 30th, the age threshold is still 12. As to whether the arrangement would be extended beyond the end of this year, this would depend on the development of the pandemic. I would now invite the Deputy Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene to talk about the situation at restaurants. The vaccine pass or vaccine bubble has been established in Type D establishments for some time, and we have accumulated experience with that already. Ms. Wang, since February the 10th at Type D eating premises, the vaccine pass has been implemented. In terms of enforcement, we have maintained communication with the trade, and we also carried out publicity efforts. So it's about it is the responsibility of the persons in charge, and the customers must produce vaccination records. According to the law, the responsible persons must conduct due diligence. So if the persons in charge use the QR code verification scanner mobile app to scan the QR code, they would be seen as fulfilling their obligations. For certain persons, as we said, there could be alternative options, and in that case, they would have to fill in paper-based forms, which is actually a declaration, and they must take responsibility for the information they provide. For customers who use other people's vaccination records with a dishonest intent, it would be an offense. Our enforcement officers can ask the persons involved to produce their identity documents and vaccination records. So this is a judgment to be made by the enforcement officers. We hope the public would comply with the law, and we would take action as necessary.
It depends on the situation. If you use another person's vaccination record, of course that is illegal. For the person who lends his vaccination record to another, it depends on the case whether he did so with intent, or if another person stole the vaccination record. It depends on the situation of each and every case. Using another person's vaccination record with dishonesty, there is a legal responsibility that pertains to it. The law enforcement agencies will carry out investigation. The lady over there.
From Bloomberg News, my questions is first for Mr. Wong. Are there any plans to add a location tracking function to the Leave Homesafe app? And what other measures to protect data privacy in the vaccine pass mechanism? And my other question, I guess, goes to Mr. Choi. This follows what my other colleagues have asked before, is what is the plan, the long-term plan for the vaccine pass? Once the vaccination rate reaches 90%, is there a plan to phase out the vaccine pass, or would it still be in place for the long term? If we're looking at mainland China, they also have a health code that people have to scan to get into public places. There have been criticisms that the health code in mainland China have been used to restrict movements for dissidents. So there is a lot of human rights concerns with how the health code is used on the mainland. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I take the first question. Thank you for your question. First of all, I need to clarify one point or reiterate one point. Is the current design of the Leave Homesafe mobile app is not a tracing device. The purpose of the mobile app is to help user to record their visit history. When he visit different venues, he did a scanning of the venue code and then records the records of their visits to the venues. And recently, to support the vaccine pass implementation, we implement the storage functions in the mobile apps to help citizens to store their vaccine QR code in the mobile apps to facilitate them if there's need to display or to show this QR code to the venue operators. That is the facilitation arrangements. And in terms of protection of privacy, as I mentioned in my introductions or demos, the vaccine information stored in the scanner mobile apps of the operators are encrypted, and also personal information like names and ID number are mastered and hashed processed, so that to make the information not identifiable becomes a scrambled information or data stored in the mobile apps. And the mobile apps will keep this information only for 31 days. It will be automatically erased. And the operators or the mobile app user have no ways to access the data. Only when there is an infection case happens in that venue, the Center of Health Protection's officer will request the operators to, through the one-time password, to unlock this mobile app and then send this encrypted data to the central database of CHP for contact tracing. So with that, we are confident that all the data kept in these mobile apps are not personally identifiable data. So personal privacy are well protected under the current design. Thank you. The one-time password comes from the CHP.
Thank you. And for the second question, may I stress again that vaccination actually is beneficial both to individuals, their family members, as well as the community at large. So the implementation of vaccine pass is actually a very convenient way for people to take compliance, especially in those passive checking premises that they are actually just like they need to take their own HKID card, that they have to prove that they are either vaccinated or they are really medically unfit and they should not get vaccinated, and there should be some medical proof. So as far as I could tell, this measure actually has already balanced how those vaccinated persons could go to various premises with the maximum convenience, but at the same time also ensure that the community could achieve a suitable level of vaccination, which means as high as possible. So as far as how long are we going to impose this vaccine pass? Vaccine pass will be here as long as it is necessary to combat COVID. The sole purpose of vaccine pass basically is to ensure the community is well equipped to fight COVID, and that's all. Thank you very much.
有冇其他英文問題?
Any other English questions, please?
A few questions from the RTHK. Can people now still store their vaccine records other than using the Leave Homesafe app, and will they still be able to enter the venue? And about exemptions for unvaccinated children and elderly, can you name the list of places with the exemptions and the places without? And lastly, why some premise owners or security guards won't have to check whether a person has a vaccine pass or not at premises like shopping malls, but other venue operators like restaurant workers have to? Thank you.
Maybe I take the questions, and then some technical questions, maybe I can let Mr. Wong to show you those technical side. On the where the vaccine pass could be stored, as I have introduced, actually we allow both electronic forms and as well as paper forms. So for paper forms, you always got the paper form of a vaccination record when you get vaccinated in the government vaccination program. So that's an easy part. But of course, you could upload it into the Live Home Safe, into the IM Smart app, as well as in our e-health record app. So Mr. Wong may supplement later on. As for your last question, why there are two types of premises that we ask for different types of checking. Basically, they are both because of risk-based as well as because of the specific nature of those premises. For example, in restaurants, we see there are really higher risk of infection and transmission. So there is a case for us to ensure that the electronic vaccination record or the vaccination record or vaccination pass must be actively checked. This serves dual purpose. One is that the compliance, of course, will be higher. And the second is that because of the combination of the Leave Home Safe scanning function that Mr. Wong has just demonstrated, with that active scanning of the vaccination pass, the restaurant operator will have a record of the patrons who entered the premises. Of course, it is scrambled and being password protected, but at the same time, when there are really some confirmed cases happened in those restaurants, etc., we will be able to track through these kind of records to get back who has entered into the premises at the same time as the case has have gone. So if you ask me from public health perspective, we do have preference over active checking. But at the same time, we know that for some premises, there are really operational difficulties to ensure that each and every person have been passed through this kind of active checking. And therefore, in malls, supermarkets, and department stores and department stores, we have been using the mode of operation called passive checking. So this will be more like the carrying of HKID card with you. The downside is, of course, that our tracking capability will be a little bit hampered. And honestly, if you ask, perhaps we do need to consider whether we should do active checking in later on. But as of now, we believe that passive checking for these premises would be the right way to do as of now. Have I left any question unanswered? No, thank you.
好，下一題。
Next question, please. The gentleman at the back. RTHK. Several questions about operational details of malls. If someone has to enter the restaurant, then he or she has to scan the mall's QR code and then the restaurant's QR code. After leaving the restaurant, then the record of the mall's QR code would be gone. Then when he's checked, and then there is no QR code record of the mall, will he be punished? About the exemption for malls, if it is on the way home, then it is exempted. However, the malls operators cannot tell whether it is really the route home for the person. Then what can the mall do? Now, mall is subject to passive checking. If there is someone who hasn't scanned the QR code of the mall, will the mall operator be held responsible? Also, can one vaccination record be registered with 2 mobile phones? Will it create a loophole?
Thank you for your questions. I might defer some of your questions to Mr. Wong. I have my vaccination record in 2 mobile phones, so that is possible. Many people indeed have more than 1 mobile phone. That is why we introduced that function. For the Leave Home Safe app, the briefing today is mainly about the vaccine pass. From Thursday, those who enter shopping malls will be asked to scan the Leave Home Safe app. So scanning the Leave Home Safe QR code is straightforward, much like producing the vaccine pass. The law provides exemptions for those who are only passing by a shopping mall on their way home or to work. And I don't see scanning the Leave Home Safe app would introduce an undue burden on people who are going home or going to work. For the Leave Home Safe app, for those who visited FEHD markets or cooked food markets, when they entered and left the cooked food market, they would have to scan the QR code. So that is why a new function would be introduced in the app. Mr. Wang, thank you very much for your question. We understand that people might need to scan the QR code of a venue whenever they enter a new venue. That is why we introduce a new function when you leave a venue and enter another. So in the 3.1.0 version update, we updated a function to return to a previous venue without having to scan the QR code again. Under the vaccine pass arrangement, as the Deputy Secretary said, so long as you bring your vaccine pass with you, whether you bring a paper-based or electronic copy, you can simply produce proof if you are subject to a check. In the Leave Home Safe app, there is the visit history function, which you can produce to the inspection offices, and such records could prove whether you scanned the QR code when you entered a venue. So with the help of technology, we hope to bring greater convenience to the public, and that they would not have to bring different documents with them. And that is why we allowed the storage of vaccination record or exemption in the app. Last two questions, please. I'm from Ming Pao. In terms of the, I have some questions about defense. For those who are, for people who are going home, do they have to bring their address proof or proof of employment? For those who are ordering takeaway food, they might not be able to produce any proof. Or would they only have a chance to offer a defense on court? For premises such as supermarkets and department stores, sometimes visitors might not know what kind of goods are offered in the stores. For instance, some people might enter a department store without knowing that it is a department store, and as such, they did not scan the QR safe code. So would they inadvertently break the law? Some members of the public intend to lodge judicial reviews over the Leave Home Safe app. Would the government come up with a response for that? Thank you very much for your questions. In terms of defense provisions, like I said, our enforcement officers are rather experienced with our experience over the past year. You asked a question about the Leave Home Safe app. But like the Leave Home Safe app, the vaccine pass is not something that is difficult to comply with. For those who are picking up takeaway food or people who are on their way home, if they are subject to an inspection, it's unlikely that penalty notices would be issued as a result. But it really depends on the degree of reasonableness. So if you are wandering in a shopping mall, it would be hard to justify that you are on your way home, etc. So we would consider the actual circumstances. As to whether it would be hard to judge whether what is a department store according to the laws, premises where the vaccine pass would apply would have to show a notice. Nowadays, most premises, including shops, already display the Leave Home Safe app. At passive checking premises, you merely have to bring the vaccination record with you. So there are no substantial risks of inadvertently breaking the law. For judicial reviews at this stage, we do not have any comments to offer. The Leave Home Safe app has been implemented for more than a year. As for the vaccine pass, there are a number of overseas examples adopting the vaccine pass to encourage vaccination. And like I said, restaurants are high-risk places, so vaccination would be a responsible decision both for yourself and your family as well as society. So we urge the public to get vaccinated for everyone's benefit. Final question for the day. The lady at the back, please. I'm from Now TV. Primary, secondary schools and universities would implement active checking. Under the vaccine pass arrangement, those above the age of 12 are required to be vaccinated. So does it mean schools would have to check students one by one whether they are vaccinated? For primary and secondary schools, they might not own a mobile phone. So what would be the arrangement? Can you tell us about the implementation details? I'd like to follow up on the rights and obligations at certain premises. For cases in which other people's vaccination records are used, do premises have the right to ascertain the identity of the customers? For shopping malls and department stores, if enforcement officers see that certain visitors do not use the vaccine pass, would the responsible persons at the malls or department stores be held liable? Finally, a question about privacy. The vaccine pass is a real name system. How can you ensure that the data would not be used by premises for other purposes? And would the CHP be the only party that could decrypt the data? So which parties or departments can access such information?
Thank you. About the powers of the premises as well as real name tracing, Mr. Wong will talk about it. About schools, Mr. To from the EDB will take the question. Now about active checking premises, we are mostly talking about restaurants. Type D restaurants are experienced in terms of their powers and obligations. Like Mr. Choi said, they just have to fulfill the due diligence requirements. As long as they have discharged that duty, they don't have to check the identity card of the customers. They need to ensure the Leave Home Safe app is scanned and also counter-scan the mobile phones with the QR verification scanner. Then the real name record would be stored in a encrypted manner within the scanner. then the data would be inaccessible until there is a confirmed case, and then the CHP issued a one-time password to decrypt the data. For passive checking premises like shopping malls and supermarkets, the operators only have to post the QR code for the vaccine pass outside the door and ensure that the customers have scanned the Leave Home Safe QR code. They don't have to counter scan the mobile phones of the customers. And also they have to ensure that their staff are vaccinated. That's the responsibility of the operators of these premises. Having done so, they would have fulfilled the due diligence requirements. If a customer enters the premises without a vaccination record, then that person would receive a fixed penalty ticket or a summons. There will be no legal responsibility for the operator. Now, Mr. Wong will talk about the real name tracing regime. Now, in terms of protection of personal data and the real name tracing function, the data will only be stored for 31 days and then automatically deleted. All the data will be encrypted. It is not accessible by the operator of the premises. Only two types of information would be stored, that is the name and the identification documents and number. These data would be hashed, and the identity of the user would be unidentifiable. Only when the CHP issue a one-time password will the operator be able to upload the data to the back office computer system of the CHP to compare the vaccination record. And then the CHP will have access to the contact number and personal data of the user. This will allow swift contact tracing by the CHP. The encryption, handling of data, as well as the operation of the system, like other government computer systems, we have conducted an assessment on information security. We have engaged a third-party consultant to assess the security of personal data. About the handling of the personal information, we have consulted the Office for the Commissioner of Personal Data, and all the laws are complied with. On the 21st of January, the Education Bureau has sent a letter to all the schools in Hong Kong about the vaccine pass or a vaccine bubble, as we called it. The letter is available online. Now, about arrangements for schools. Starting 24th of February this year, besides except for exempted persons, that is people with valid medication certificate showing that they are not fit for vaccination, primary, secondary schools, kindergarten come CCC, schools providing a non-local curriculums, as well as tutorial schools, all teaching and non-teaching staffs, service providers at schools, and visitors have to show at least a one-dose vaccination record before they can enter schools. All teaching and non-teaching staff employed by the school, if they are only vaccinated once, they need to be vaccinated before the 21st of April, before they can enter schools. The vaccination pass arrangement is not applicable to students. Now, a reporter asked about the implementation details. If you remember, in this academic year that is starting last 1st of September, we had a regular testing regime implemented. It is different from the vaccine pass. However, schools have accumulated experience, so we believe that the implementation will be smooth. We will send information packs to schools about the vaccine pass. If there are inquiries, the EDB will be pleased to provide advice and answers. Thank you. This is the end of the media briefing. Thank you. Sorry, the speaker is not coming through the mic. First of all, the data is unidentifiable. Second, the data is only for anti-epidemic purpose. The data is only for anti-epidemic purpose. Thank you very much.